Hi, ladies. Welcome to High Heels and Destiny. Today we have Shanicka House on board with us. Shanicka, she's a transparent coach. She teach women that's trying to bear kids in the process of bearing kids, ladies that may have lost a child, anyone that's on that journey and going through that process. She's transparent. She shows transparent moments on her Instagram page just to keep women encouraged. So, Shanicka, I would like for you to introduce yourself and just tell them a little bit about what you do.
Hi, as you said, my name is Shanicka House, or some may know me as Shanicka Vail House. And I am the transparent mom. I'm the curator of moments, and that is where real life motherhood meets the divine revelation that God gives me just through my interactions with my children. And it started out being my children here, but as it's evolved, it's also been the divine revelation that He's given me even through my angel babies. The platform, My Transparent Moments, started out just with me sharing my own personal motherhood journey. And it's also become an online store where I also sell faith onesies. So I'm standing in faith with women who are expecting to be expecting, is how I like to say it, or moms in waiting. And I also am a birth, bereavement, and postpartum doula. So I not only help to walk with women just on my platform, but I'm also able to walk with some women, well, now virtually because of the pandemic, through different phases of their process with birthing children, and some women, as we said, who have lost children through that grieving process. So that's pretty much what I've been doing in this space with My Transparent Moments meets birthing moments.
So, can you let them know what a doula is? Because when you first said it to me when we was on the phone, I was like, a doula? I have never heard of it before. So, can you let them know what a doula for the ones that may not know what a doula is?
Absolutely. A doula is it's a birthing assistant. Many of you know me from my work as a personal assistant. I traveled with my cousin for about 5 years as her personal assistant. And that is me in the birthing world. I'm a birthing assistant where you walk with women during their mostly their last trimester, their third trimester. And you are with them to support them emotionally, to support them as an advocate in the birthing space. We, as Black women, experience a higher maternal mortality rate than other women, and we unfortunately don't receive the care that we sometimes deserve in the medical profession. So to have someone there with you in your room, or virtually sometimes now because of the pandemic, who can just make you aware of what's happening. Sometimes we give birth, but we don't always know the rights that we have. We don't always know what some of the medical terms are that they throw around. We just know that we want to be okay and we want our children to be okay. So just to have someone there to make sure that you know what's happening, that you're aware of what's happening, and to be able to stand in the gap for you, basically when you are birthing your baby, and making sure that you are okay, that your baby's okay. And in the bereavement world is to help walk you through the grief process after you've lost your baby. So some to miscarriage, and some, are stillbirths, to be able to have somebody to, again, be that emotional support for you as you're walking through that loss. And then the postpartum part of the doula process is to have someone there to help you after you give birth. Sometimes you're there and you have a village, and you have your mom, or you have other family members who can come in and take care of you, but not everyone has that. So to have somebody who can come in and be emotional support for you, but also give you maybe the naps that you need, right after you have your baby, or to be able to help you process through the breastfeeding part of your journey after you give birth, and just so many different things, help you with little small things around the house, just until you get your footing as you become a new mom, or a new mom again in some cases.
Okay, awesome. I love that. Absolutely love that. Okay, and so we're gonna jump right on into it, Shanicka. My
Okay.
first question for you is, Shanicka, did you come from a big family, and do you have a lot of siblings?
I did not. Overall, I come from a big family, but my immediate family is small. I was an only child for 13 years. My brother and I are 13 years apart, and it's just the two of us from my mom. I also have two bonus brothers. And then I have a brother from my biological father, but I didn't meet him until I was in my 20s. So I grew up with a small immediate family, but I am a huge family person. My grandmother had 9 children, 8, she birthed 9 children, but I had a lot of uncles, and my mom is the only girl. So I have a lot of cousins, and we grew up really close. So I had a lot of extended family, but just a small immediate family.
Okay. How many kids do you have right now?
I have 2. I have Reagan, who is 5, and I have Ryan, who just turned 3 on Tuesday.
Okay. What does being a mother mean to you, and how important is it?
Oh man, being a mother to me means giving of yourself to help nurture an extension of yourself. And I say it that way because I know so many mothers who mother children who didn't give birth to them. So I don't believe that a mother ends at the person who gives birth to a child. Is a woman who will directly nurture and steward and help grow an extension of her in whatever way that extension comes, be that, surrogacy, adoption, however it is that you are blessed with your children, for you to have the responsibility of being able to nurture and steward them well. And motherhood is extremely important to me. That is the one thing that I always knew I wanted to be. I wasn't the child that had this one profession, that I was just stuck to my whole life. When I grow up, I'm going to be this. It changed from week to week. The 2 things that you could ask me that I wanted to be, that was always the same, never changed, was that I wanted to be a wife and that I wanted to be a mom. So motherhood has, since as far as I can remember, been very important to me.
Okay. Shanicka, you mentioned in 2019 you started working on a book, but God told you to start writing a child book. Tell us a little bit about that.
So I have, since I guess about 2016, well, I guess before that, but I've been deeming the moments, I guess, since about 2016, sharing my transparent moments in that way. And so, of course, people are used to what I call the tap. So the tap is where I'm in the middle of doing whatever the natural motherhood thing is, whatever I'm saying to my daughter, whatever moment we're having in the natural motherhood part of what we're doing. And as I am having this interaction with my children, I get this tap, and that's where the Holy Spirit is either, directly talking to me through me, whatever it is that I'm saying to her, or just the situation in general. I get this divine revelation that causes me to be better as a person, to be a better Christian, to be just better overall. And so I call those the taps. And so I will tell them when I share them, I'll give them what's happening. So I set it up so that you can get the visual of what's happening in the natural motherhood moment. And then I said, and then what happens, the tap. And so they know
like
when
that.
They see the tap. Yeah. So they know what happens when they see the tap. So I was working on a book, just kind of basically pulling together a lot of the taps, just a lot of the moments that I've shared over the years. And Holy Spirit told me to pause that wasn't going to be my next published work, to write a children's book. And this was ironic, I guess you could say, because my oldest daughter, Reagan, she, for a couple years, would talk about her brother CJ, and everybody knew she didn't have a brother CJ. She was my only child, and then we had her sister. So there were the 2 of them, but no brother. And so I would share those funny moments with people on social media, and so CJ became a real person to other people. And I told them that my next children's book was going to be a book about childlike faith, and it was going to be called Expecting CJ. But I was really kidding until that moment when Holy Spirit told me that, my book about my transparent moments wasn't my next book, that he wanted me to actually write Expecting CJ. And so that's what I did. So in November of 2019, I paused writing the book that I was working on, and I wrote within that month Expecting CJ.
What was the book that you was working on? What did it pertain to, the book that you was working on before you started the children book?
My transparent moments. So just
Okay.
sharing, just sharing all of the moments, elaborating maybe on all of the moments that I've had just with my children, and sharing the way that God will speak to us in the everyday mundane happenings of life, if we're just open to really being sensitive to his spirit and to his voice.
Okay. So in 2020, you started writing a book, but you found out you was pregnant. What was that journey like? You got the tap, and then you found out you was pregnant when she was starting to write the book.
So I finished the book in 2019, and then I was working on the publishing process, the illustrating process at the beginning of 2020. And 2 weeks into that process with the illustrator, I found out I was pregnant. So of course I'm thinking that everything is making sense to me, because, oh, you're telling me to write expecting CJ because we're expecting CJ. So it was really exciting. It was really surreal. And I started to plan the process of the book around what I expected for that pregnancy, as far as, when I would release it, and when I would, tell people that I was writing it, or when I was gonna be publishing it. Just everything around the book, I was centering it around my pregnancy. And it was just really exciting, because I thought, how wonderful I'll be able to birth this project, and also birth, the baby that I've been believing for years. So that was exciting, and it didn't pan out the way that I thought it would, but that was exciting nonetheless.
Okay. So let's talk about, you shared something to me I found to be very profound. You said, while you was on the plane, and when you looked into the clouds, you saw the name. Could you share to us about that encounter when you was on the plane and you looked into the clouds? Because, a lot of people believe that God encounters are not real, but I mean, something as simple as what you said was like a whoa moment for me.
Okay, so before my husband and I got married, I was having, I wouldn't call it fertility challenges, but I didn't know if what I was experiencing would cause fertility challenges. I was in the doctor's office just getting some things checked out, because I'd been having some things happening in my body that just kind of raised some red flags. So I just wanted to make sure that everything was going well. And they found a goiter, and this goiter was a growth on my thyroid. So I had to get some blood work done. They wanted to make sure, that my thyroid levels were what they needed to be. And if they weren't, to know what the next steps would be. And so just in my research of looking, for things that could happen if this were an issue, I saw that because it's dealing with your hormones, that fertility could be affected. And because this was the one desire of my heart that was unchanging, I was like, this would be the one thing that the enemy would try to fight me on. And so I began to get a little bit anxious about it, and I wasn't married. My husband and I, we weren't married at the time. We were just dating. So it wasn't like we were actively trying to have a baby. So I had no way of knowing if this would be an issue for me. And so I was still traveling with my cousin at the time. And I was on a flight from the West Coast coming back to the East Coast. And while looking out of the window out into the clouds, it's like I had this vision. It wasn't like the clouds themselves just formed into the letters, but I literally just had this vision where I could see those names just written in the clouds. And then one name was CJ, and then one name was Reagan Lee. And I could see the way that it was spelled and everything. And I wrote it down. You'll hear my daughter in the background. These are my transparent moments. My whole mom, 24/7. But okay. I could literally see it written. And I was traveling, I was assistant. So I had paper and pens and all of that stuff. And so I pulled out my notebook and my pen, and I just wrote those names down in my notebook the way that I saw it. And then I held I held on to those names. So fast forward a couple years later, whenever my husband and I, we were married, and then we find out that we were expecting, I just believed that the first name that I saw was CJ. So I just believed that that was the baby that I was carrying. So I called my baby CJ for 5 months until we had the ultrasound, and the lady said, "Oh, that's a girl." And I was like, "Oh, okay, well, hey, Reagan." So we knew that, Reagan was the baby girl. And so we just knew, okay, all we got left is CJ. And then we got pregnant again. And that was our surprise baby, which is Ryan, which is who you hear in the background. And so once we had Reagan and once we had surprise baby Ryan, when we got pregnant that third time, we just knew, okay, this is CJ. Like, this is the baby that we were promised, before we ever got married. And so that is where the name came from. That is why it was always so amazing when Reagan would talk about her brother CJ and just begin to explain who he was to us. And so that was how the book really came about and why it was so exciting for us.
So what was that moment like when you was just in the plane and you saw those names? Was it like, oh my God moment? Like what was it like?
It was just really peaceful. I have, I guess you would say, visions all the time. I see things alliterated, as I would say, just often. It's not like an out of body experience or anything. I literally just see things. So because it wasn't uncommon, I guess, that something like that would happen for me. I just had never seen anything like that pertaining to my children or something as specific pertaining to me. So when I saw it, it was just like I could see the children there, and it was just really peaceful, really comforting for me, because that let me know that God was concerned about what I was concerned about. And it was just kind of like his wink to me, like, I got you. It may not be right now. I didn't know when it was going to happen, but that was comforting and reassuring for me to let me know, okay, this is not something that I have to really, just worry about, because God sees me and he knows the desire of my heart. He has given me the desire of my heart. And that's one thing that I held on to in that moment.
Okay. So found out you was pregnant was exciting news to you. You already have 2 kids. And but when you went to the doctor to get your ultrasound, they told you there was no heartbeat. How did that affect your emotional, mental, and spiritual state?
I was in a complete fog in the doctor's office when they told me that day. I couldn't honestly say I never would have imagined that it would happen, because probably a week or so after I found out I was pregnant, I started to have really bad anxiety, and I would just constantly hear, "You won't see this baby. You won't see this baby. This baby will not, be birthed alive." And so that was something that I constantly fought for that entire pregnancy. So even when I was in the doctor's office getting ready to get the ultrasound, even the process that was leading up to that appointment, I'd had some challenges with even getting in to have the ultrasound, and nothing was really confirming anything good for me. It just always felt like something is wrong. So even while I was in there, I didn't feel settled. I was just really unsure, but I was still believing, I still had faith. But it was a fight. It was a faith fight, definitely. So going in and just looking at the ultrasound, I've had 2 babies before, so I'm aware of what your baby usually looks like around this part of the process, and nothing about the ultrasound looked like what I was expecting it to. And the sonographer, she was just really quiet, not saying a whole lot. And so I was like, okay, let me break the silence. Let me ask her. And the way that she responded, again, let me know that something was not right. So when she didn't say anything, when she was really solemn and she told me, I can go ahead and get dressed, I was like, okay, something is awful. My children were in the room at the time, and so she didn't want to say too much because she didn't know what she was released to say in front of them. But one of them had to go to the restroom, and so my husband took them out of the room, and that's when she began to explain to me, I'm really sorry. Your baby didn't have a heartbeat, at that moment, I just kind of went numb. I didn't say a lot, you know, I didn't bust into tears. It was literally just like I was in a fog, just trying to grab a hold of life. Honestly, it was just like the world stops turning and everything just seems unreal in that moment. So as I was trying to process what she was telling me, I didn't really think anything. I was just kind of there. So as we were waiting to see the doctor, to have her come in and tell me, you know, what the next steps were, I heard God say to me, there's still life there. And so that was where I kind of felt like my faith was starting to, you know, be charged, even though it was being tested, you know, even though it was being tried and put in the fire, that God was like, okay, I'm still here. Like there's still life there. And so the doctor gave me, you know, all of the options. And I was like, you know, I don't want to do any of that. I just want to wait. And so what I was really saying to her was, I just want to wait on God. You know, I've heard from him that there's still life there. I don't know what that means. So I just want to wait and see what that is. And so when I left the hospital, I was broken. You know, I never want people to think when I say I was, oh, Alexa, stop. See, that's why you have to say stuff. Just do that. Sorry. I don't want people to think that when I say, you know, I was faith-filled and I was believing for, you know, for my babies to be resurrected in my womb, and that, you know, people see me and they say that I was so strong. I don't want people to think that you know, it doesn't hurt. I was devastated. I was broken. I cried a whole lot of tears, but I still believe God. You know, I was believing God for a miracle. I was believing God for healing of my emotions, healing in my body, because I didn't know if something was happening. And that was the reason why my baby didn't have a heartbeat. But I was believing him to do what only he could do. I know that there was nothing that the doctors could do. I knew that there was nothing that I could do outside of praying and believing. And so I was believing him for that. So my mental state was, I was clear. I wasn't in denial about what was happening naturally in my body. But I was also faith-filled, and I believe God to do miracles, because I know he does miracles, right? So I was very, I had my moments, but I was strong. As my grandma says, I was strong in the Lord, because I couldn't be strong in myself. In my flesh, I was broken, I was hurt. But I was strong in the Lord because I knew the God that I served, and I knew that even if he didn't do it, that he could. And so that was what I held on to.
Let me ask you a question, Shanicka. When you said that, you know, when you was going through the process and you was pregnant and you heard a voice and it was saying that the baby wouldn't make it, like when that came to you, did you think that was like from God or the devil? Because like instantly, if something like that comes to me, I'm gonna think this got to be the devil.
Oh, I absolutely thought it was the devil, and I rebuked it, and I left no dead space from that time until I lost my baby. Literally, I was constantly playing worship music. I was always praying. I was playing books on Audible that fed my faith, whatever could fill my space, so that I had no idle time to just drift off and think, or just really focus on what I felt like I was hearing, or what I, felt like was taunting me rather. Then that's what I did, because I was like, the devil is a liar, my baby. So I'm confessing my scriptures, and I'm doing all my pregnancy confessions and all of this, because I was like, no, we are combating that. I do not receive that. But after it happened, it was one of those things where I had to wonder, did I just automatically assume that it was the devil because it was something that I didn't want to hear? Or could it have been God preparing me? And I honestly don't have an answer for that. I don't know. I can't say, no, I know that was the devil, because, I don't know the answer to that. I just know that during the fight, when I heard it, prayer is what kept me. And then once I actually did lose my baby, that prayer and worship is still what kept me. So yeah.
Can't even imagine like you pregnant and you carrying a baby and then something come to you and say, and say what it said, it's no peace in that. You got to carry the baby and thinking every day about that voice that came to you. That could be, I mean, I can see where that can start some type of anxiety because who wants to think that?
Yeah, it was definitely it was not pleasant. But I just thought that maybe, who I'm birthing, who I'm called to birth into the earth is, the assignment that they have is so great that it's just something that the enemy does not want them here. So I just know I have to fight that much harder spiritually to make sure that they're covered. So I wasn't I guess I wasn't surprised by hearing it. It was surprising, I guess, because I'd never heard it before. But, when we're doing what we're called to do, when we're walking in purpose and we're doing it God's way and for the kingdom, then of course the enemy's not gonna like that.
Yes.
So I wasn't shocked by it, but it was the first time that I'd ever experienced it. So I was like, oh, okay, like this pregnancy is really different. Like, okay, I gotta come from another angle with this one. But yeah, it was not comfortable at all.
How many months were you at the time when you had your ultrasound, when you found out the baby had passed?
I was right at 3 weeks. I was 9 weeks when I had my ultrasound.
Okay. So you said something powerful. Well, let me go back a little bit. You went back, okay, after the doctor gave you a choice, they told you that you can have a surgical procedure or either take a pill. You chose that you was going to, hold on and just kind of see what God was going to do. But when you went, wasn't it 2 weeks when you miscarried 2 weeks prior to going back to the doctor, right?
So I was given they told me I could come in 2 weeks after finding out that the baby didn't have a heartbeat to see where my body was at in the process. And so 2 or 3 days before that appointment was when I actually miscarried. So I carried my baby for another 2 weeks, almost 2 weeks, after finding out that it had no heartbeat. So I was 9 weeks when we had the ultrasound, and I was at 11 weeks when I actually miscarried.
Okay. You said something really powerful. You said, God, why not a miracle? And he said, there is a miracle. What do you think God meant by this?
So after I had the miscarriage, Holy Spirit told me to come to him every day with a confession and with a question. And so that's what I did. And my first question was, why not a miracle? And he said there was one. And so I'm still here. And that's a miracle. After I had my miscarriage, I lost a lot of blood, and I ended up having to have a blood transfusion because my hemoglobin levels were dropping below what they needed to be. And so to keep my organs and all of that from shutting down, I had to have a blood transfusion. So I don't know entirely what all it meant, but the fact that I'm still here, the fact that I am in my right mind, the fact that I can go and take a shower every day and not be tormented by the fact that I lost my baby in that same shower, that's a miracle. So I see the hand of God in so many ways. Just because I'm still alive, sometimes we say, I know God works miracles, and we've already deemed what the miracle will look like in our mind. And I think we have to be comfortable with knowing that the miracle may not always look like what we think it's going to look like.
Absolutely. That's good. So after you lost your baby, you said that you started focusing on God and healing. What did that process look like? Like, what would you tell another mother that have miscarriage, lost a baby, and how can they start to look towards God and work on healing within themselves?
I think for me, I just knew that if I was going to be healed from it, that God was going to be the one to do it. There was nothing else that that I could go to, no person, no thing that I could do that I knew would heal me from, this devastating blow. And So that was immediately where I run to. And I know that's probably not everyone's first reaction. Some people, their first thought is, God, why would you do this? And so they're upset and they run from God. But, God can handle our anger. So even in that, I encourage some women, to be willing to lay down that anger in order to be able to go to him for healing. Because there's really, I can tell you 10 things that I did, but if you do those things absent from him, I don't know that would bring any healing for you. Like I bought plants, I bought more plants rather, and I gardened and I journaled and I did all of those things. And yes, they were helpful in my journey, but I talked to my friends. I was able to process through texting some of them. And one of my friends, she's a therapist, and I was able to do that. And I was able to have go through grief groups and things like that. And they were all very helpful, but the healing that I've experienced has only come from God. So I could tell people several things to do, but my first suggestion would be to go to God.
Okay. So you said that you was asking God, what purpose would the baby serve? And he said to you, let justice flow like a river. Can you
Yeah,
elaborate
so
a little bit?
I pray over my babies when I carry them, because if you read the Bible, then you see how God, or his angels will come to women and tell them that they're expecting, and he'll tell them about who they're carrying and what their purpose in the earth is to be. And I don't believe that that's something that ended just in the Bible days. So when I'm pregnant, then I pray and ask God, who am I carrying? What is their purpose? How am I supposed to steward them? Just so that I can begin preparing myself, not just as a mother, but the mother of who I'm carrying. And so just in doing that, in the shower, that's my prayer closet. So just doing that one day, and as I was praying, what I felt him telling me about the baby didn't seem to line up with what I had heard about the baby CJ. And so I began to wonder, well, am I having twins? Like, when one of the things that he spoke to me during that moment was, let justice flow like a river. And I was like, okay, so, am I having twins? And one of the twins is supposed to be named Justice. I wasn't sure, but because I journal and I write down a lot of things, or try to write down, when he speaks to me, I wrote it down in the journal that I was keeping for the baby. And so it came back to me after I actually lost the baby. And I was like, oh, like, just, you see hindsight, you start to see a little bit clearer and things start to make a little bit more sense. And I was like, oh, okay. And so from that, we named the baby Justice River. And I found purpose in just that loss, just being able to use that as a tool to help other women who have walked through that, or who will walk through that. And I say that is allowing justice to continue to flow like a river, because had I not had that experience with him, then I wouldn't be able to walk with women the way that I am pertaining to infant loss and pregnancy loss.
Okay. So, okay, we're at a point where you were just getting over one child, and then 6 months later in August, you were pregnant again with your next child.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you're excited, you're pregnant again with your next child. And I want to be as sensitive about this as possible, because I know how this is. And September the 28th, you went into the doctor. 8 weeks later, you pregnant. Okay, this may be baby CJ. And then 8 weeks later, you found out there was another there wasn't another heartbeat with this baby. How
Yes.
did that second baby, same thing again, back to back? How do you, at this point, I mean, you strong, how do you start to cope with this?
Um, when you lose a child, or I'll make it personal, when I lost Justice, I didn't think that I could experience anything else that could hurt me. as bad as that did. And to have to go through it twice was worse. And you think, I didn't think it could feel any worse than it did. And the second one was utter devastation, because I didn't, the anxiety that I had when I carried Justice, I didn't have that again, So it wasn't like I felt like something was wrong. I was really sure that, this was it. This was my rainbow baby. This is the baby, that God has promised me. I went through the breaking, and I've learned the lessons. I believe I've gotten everything that I was supposed to get, from that, and I'll continue to walk in that and walk that out. But I fully believed that was it. And so when one night, just randomly, I didn't feel any different, but just going to the restroom, and was like, I think maybe I see some spotting. And I was like, I'm not gonna let this bother me. It was time for me to go to bed, and it wasn't something I wanted to really, just be up with all night. I was like, you know what, God, I trust you. I'm just gonna go to bed. And when I got up the next morning, it was even heavier than it was before. So I was like, let me just go to the doctor to make sure that everything is okay. I understand that you can you can experience this a little bit and everything still be fine, but I just want them to confirm for me that everything is okay. So I made an appointment to go to the doctor that day. And I really I didn't go in apprehensive. I didn't go in, fearful, thinking, oh my gosh, this is about to be just like last time. I really was like, oh, you know what, God, this was something that so I could just get in early to see my baby, because the wait between when I found out and when I had to go and get the ultrasound was just like, it just seemed like a year. And so I really had still probably another week before my actual appointment. So I was like, this was just a way for me to come in and see my baby early. So for me to go in and, everybody is expecting for things to be okay. Even the ultrasound tech, so everybody is taken back. She was like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, what do you mean you're so sorry? I know this is not the same I'm so sorry as, before. And it was. And so I broke in the office. Like, they were having to almost like usher me out of the room, because they needed to bring somebody else in to do an ultrasound. But I was just like, this cannot be happening. And the first thing that I could even utter to my husband was I was not supposed to have to pay twice. And that was just, a part of the confession that I'd been making over that pregnancy. I've been confessing on Nahum 1:9, I believe it is, that I wouldn't have to pay twice, that this one wouldn't end the same way the last one did. And so here I was in the same place. And I was just like, okay, I don't get it. I was able to, kind of center myself and see purpose in the first one. And I couldn't put my finger on anything with the second loss. I don't understand why this is happening. I don't understand why I have to go through this again. So I was just like stuck. And I, again, I was just like, why am I here? Why am I here again? And you hear people say, you don't question God. I don't question God's sovereignty, but I absolutely ask questions. And he freed me, in that space after the first loss, when he told me to come to him with questions and confession. So I didn't question his sovereignty, but I absolutely asked questions like, why am I here again? What am I supposed to get from this? Why is this a recurring thing now? What's happening? So many questions, but it was utter devastation the second time. Absolutely.
So how did you start to begin the grieving process with this one?
I reached out for my friends in a different way. They would check on me, before with the first one, but this one, I was like, okay, I'm going to need to lean on y'all this time. And so, like I said, one of my friends is actually a therapist, and she was actually starting up a grief group right during that space. And someone had sowed a seed for someone to be able to go for free. And she was just like, I really believe that was just God setting this up for you. So we're going to let you have, this space so you can, join in the grief group if you desire to do so. And I did. So I was able to be in a space, sharing with other people, not who shared the same exact story as me, but who knew loss in a very, very deep way. And so to be able to share with them, because sometimes when you experience loss and you have a community or you have, support around you, there's still a level of isolation because you have to process so many things, and so many things become triggers for you in this space that you feel like if you share it with somebody who can't really identify with it on a personal level, you kind of feel like you're dumping on them. And so you don't want to always just release that all of the time. And so you end up holding a lot of it in. So to be in a space where you could share openly and freely and not feel like you're dumping on anybody, and you feel like what you're sharing, people are able to understand, there was just another level of healing that I experienced with that. So I was able to lean on people. I shared a lot more vulnerably on social media. I shared the process the first time with Justice, but I didn't really give people so many intimate details of the process. And that was something I felt God leading me to do with the second loss. So I let people see the tears. I let people see the bad days. I wanted people to people, they saw me sharing, they saw the strength in my sharing, and they would just say, oh, you're so strong, you're so strong. And I wanted people to see what my, what strength, the strength that you see is not my own strength. I am very weak right now. The strength that you've seen me stand in has been God's strength, but I want you to see my humanity. I want you to see how broken I am and how people really feel in this space. Because to a lot of people, when you miscarry and you lose a baby, especially early in pregnancy, because people aren't able to see it, they dismiss it. And it's not an intentional kind of, it doesn't matter, but it's just not as personal to them as it is to the mom. And so to be able to shine the light on that and let people know, hey, like this is a real thing. The same way you guys would be broken if something happened to one of my living children, this is the same type of brokenness that I experienced here. So what I've been able to see is that in letting people in on that part of my process, they hold my angel babies as close as they do the children that they see me post about every day. And that's just come from a level of me bringing education and awareness. But I don't want people to only do that with me. I want them to do that with the person that's in their circle, that has experienced this. I don't want them to put a timeline on their grief, and I don't want them to say, girl, you still talking about that? You ain't over that yet. I want them to see how this lasts and, lives with us for the rest of our lives. We won't always be, completely out of it, and just, we'll be able to go on with our lives, but it's not something for us to get over. It's something you can get on with, but it's not something that you get over. And I just really wanted to be able to highlight that. And that's something that I was able to do after losing Kobe. But the devastation of it was, it leaves me speechless, honestly.
Did you ever have a moment where you was angry at God? Because we have moments where we get angry at God and was like, that's not fair, Did you ever have that moment?
I didn't. And I understand why people, why people do. So I don't say that people who get angry with God are wrong. That was just not one of the emotions that I felt during either of my processes. It was just more hurt. I had confusion for sure about why he would allow it. I didn't, and I think my anger, I didn't experience anger because I didn't feel like he caused it or, he made it happen. I had the confusion of why would you let this happen? Because I knew it was something he had to allow, because if he had said, no, that's not happening, then my babies would be here. So my confusion came in, well, why would you allow that? So those were the types of questions that I have. But because, like I said, because I don't question his sovereignty, because I understand that he knows my end from my beginning, he knows how this works, for my good, even though I don't see it right now and it doesn't feel good right now. So I don't understand why I would have to go through that. So I trusted in his sovereignty, but I just didn't understand why it had to happen that way. So that was, I believe, why I didn't really feel the anger, because I didn't feel like I was mad at him for doing that, because I understood that that wasn't something that he did.
So, one question, like when sometimes when women experience something like that, they start to feel like, is it something wrong with me? Did you ever have that moment of feeling like, is it something wrong with me?
Um, in a sense, to not to the point of really feeling shamed. And I like to really honor my husband in that part, because after the first loss, literally we were in the doctor's office still, and he started to immediately speak into me, hey, there's nothing wrong with you, you know, this is not your fault, nothing that you did caused this, and just really started to affirm me in that moment. So shame didn't have space to take root. But I did, after the second one, it was just like, okay, what's happening in my body now that's, you know, that's causing this? Because, and of course it made me go back to what really flared my concern about fertility, which was the thyroid. Because before we got pregnant in 2020, I had a thyroidectomy in 2019, where they removed the goiter and also removed one of the thyroids. But my levels were still fine. I didn't have any issues that I don't have to take any medication from. And so we had no reason to think that it would cause, you know, anything with any pregnancies. But because that was the one thing that stood out, and I was like, okay, you know, there's something happened in my body from that time until this time, and is that something that we need to go and check? So of course we're having some tests done, and we're checking this and we're checking that. So yeah, I did ask the question, you know, is there something wrong in my body, but never really asked, is there something wrong with me? Like, I didn't take on the weight of, is there something that I've done that's caused this? You know, is there something that I didn't do to cause this? So I did ask if there was something going on in my body, but I never really questioned if there was anything wrong with me.
Okay. And so as we kind of come to our closing, I want to just hit bases with this, because I watch a lot of your reels. And women, you know, and I see that you say this, and I completely agree. Women, we sometimes put so much pressure on each other. And I say that to say, like you said in one of your reels, someone may say, well, it's okay, you got two kids, you know, at least you got two. Like, really, that, you know, women have to, you know, show sympathy. It doesn't matter if you have two kids. If you want three, four, five, six, seven, you know, you do what you do. So let's talk a little bit about how us as women got to be more empathetic towards each other. Or maybe a woman may come up and say, well, you and your husband have any kids yet? And they don't know, or maybe your husband may have a fertility issue, or maybe you may have an issue. Like, these are things that we need to be more sensitive towards when we start approaching women, and we start saying, why you haven't had any kids? And, you know, what's taking so long? And, you know, you don't, when you meet somebody, you want to be like, well, hey, I got these issues going on, so this is why, you know, like, let's talk about that a little bit. Just being, you know, women having more empathy.
Yeah, it actually would really all be eradicated if we just start off with minding our business. And that's honestly, you know, it sounds smart alecky, I guess, to say, but if you're honest, like, you have to really ask your question, why would what this woman decides to do with her body or in her marriage, how does that have anything to do with me? And so if somebody is, you know, willing to share that with you openly, and they just come to you, or they trust you enough to really share, she's over me now, to really share that information with you, then that's one thing. But just to go in and just really ask somebody that information, like, would you go and ask somebody, are you on your period right now? Would you go and ask somebody, you know, do you still have all of your reproductive organs, or have you ever had a hysterectomy before? Those questions seem absurd to you. You know, no, I wouldn't go and ask somebody that. So why would you go and ask somebody, you know, something so personal when it doesn't directly affect you? So if you would just start thinking that way, then we'd be a little more cautious about what we say to people, or how we ask our questions, or what we ask when we're speaking to women. But also, if you do just ask women, don't ask, you know, with the intent of making them be, you know, making something be wrong with them if they don't. You know, why you don't have no kids yet? You know, why? Like, those questions, they're rude. Like, just, you know, just point point blank, because you don't. And regardless of whether, she just doesn't want any, or if, she's having fertility challenges or her husband is having some challenges, it's just none of your business. And if they, bring you into that space, then to be able to know how to, still be sensitive to what they're going through. But I think at that point, if somebody trusts you with that information, then they already believe that you have the capacity to be sensitive to what they're going through. But I think we can really just nip that in the bud by minding our business, or as my cousin says, mind your own uterus.
And and I think when we have that conversation, because I have done it before, I think sometimes it's just a general conversation, like, hey girl, you and your husband having kids, but the problem becomes when people start to rehearse it. Like, it's, they constantly asking you. It's okay when you ask the first time, you're like, well, it's just not timing. But if that becomes a topic in every conversation, when y'all gonna do this? Y'all need to go ahead and have baby. They don't know what situation that can be going on, at that time, like you said. So people, I think women, we just got to be more mindful of that when we have conversations with friends and family. Once you ask a person one time and they say what they say, like, let it go and leave it alone, because you really don't know what that person could be going through. So
Absolutely.
we ask because it's normal. It's a normal question. Somebody get married. Hey, are you going to have kids or whatever? But don't continue to go on and on and on and on. Evidently, if they ain't had some, kind of common sense, it may be a problem, like it may be a problem, maybe some type of issue going on. So I think us as women, like, we got to be really, really mindful of that, because it can become annoying when a person constantly asking you, and people put this pressure on you. Well, as soon as you get married, you got to have kids, or you need kids. Or, that's not everybody's story. Everybody's story is completely different. Some people want kids, some people don't want kids. And I just think that we shouldn't put pressure on people for whatever decision they choose to make. Like you say, it's
absolutely. There's such a difference between, hey, do you have any kids, or hey, do you guys want any kids, and y'all ain't got no kids yet, or when y'all gonna start having kids. Like, those questions are really invasive. And they're, if you're just having general conversation and, you're asking just for the purpose of getting to know somebody a little bit more, what they like, what they have, what they don't like, say, oh, do you have any kids? And a simple, oh, no. And then you can leave it at that. You don't have to probe into the whys and the why nots and all of that. And you also don't have to say it in a way that makes people feel like, there is something wrong with you because you don't have any kids, or because you don't want any kids. And I think that's something that people do because to them, I guess it seems out of the norm. Like, oh, who doesn't want kids? Well, there are people who, they don't feel like that's their calling, or that's, that lines up with what they're supposed to be doing in their lives. And, that is what it is. And so there are ways to ask it, and, ask that question without it being offensive, and without also inserting your belief that this person should have children at this point. So, like you said, the first time, you're just meeting somebody, or, just talking with somebody, oh, do you have any children, or do you guys want kids? Somebody, it's a newly married couple, do you guys want kids? And, if they say yes, then, leave it at that, or no, you don't have to walk their timeline or anything like that. But yeah, there's a way that you can ask it that is still, it can bring the conversational, take the conversational, not have to make it go left without being insensitive to those types of issues.
Before we close, Shanicka, I want you to say something to a woman, leave some type of nugget to a woman that's struggling right now, that feels like, something is wrong with them, or, God is not going to give me a child. What's a piece of hope and faith that you can leave with a woman that's struggling? And we're not going to say struggling, that's going through challenges, because God said that all things is possible through him. Just feel like it may not happen for them, or thinking it's impossible. What's something that you can say to encourage them?
I would just say to continue to believe. And with me, I guess I can share this piece to kind of put it in perspective. After we lost our second baby, my husband said, if you don't want to do this again, if you don't want to go through this again, then I am okay. And my response to him was, maybe if I just, you know, if we were just trying to have another baby, maybe if we were just trying to have a boy, you know, I might consider saying, you know what, okay, I don't want to do this anymore because I don't even want this to ever be a possibility for me again. But I was holding on to a promise, you know, it wasn't just the idea of a baby. God had made me a promise. And so I was like, you know, this is a promise that he made to me. He's got to make it good. So what if you have a promise from God, hold on to that, and against what everybody says, what anybody else thinks. I just was in a room on Clubhouse with a woman who said that she had 6 miscarriages and that people thought, I think it was 6, somewhere between 6 and 8 or 9, but she had had multiple losses. And people at that point thought that she was crazy to continue trying. But she had a promise from God. She had seen her children in a dream, and she knew that if that was something that God had shown her, if that was something that God had promised to her, then that was something that God had to make good. And she was willing to, you know, go through the fight in order to go through her process, her specific process to get to her promise. And so that would be my nugget for you. If you have a promise from God, hold on to the promise, because that's the thing that's going to pull you through the process. The process is not always easy. The process is hardly ever easy. It's going to be some hard days and probably some tear-filled nights. But if you can hold on to the promise, that's the light. That's the light that you have to lead you through the dark places. And just hold on to God's word over everybody else's word. You know, the doctor may tell you something that you don't want to hear, but if you have a word from God, then that's what we're going to believe. Continue to confess, I believe the report of the Lord. And it's not that you're in denial about what a doctor's report may say, but you know, you hold on to the report of the great physician. So just hold on to God's word, hold on to God's promise over everybody else's word, and continue to believe that.
And what about for a woman that may not have a promise, but she's just trying to keep her faith alive?
Hope against hope. Hope
Oh,
against
that's
hope.
good. And you
Hope
said
against
something
hope.
at the beginning, like you said something, I can't remember your exact words, but you said for mothers, some to the certain extent, as like, say for instance, a woman that may not be able to bear a child, you can be a mother in more than one areas, even if you can't bear a child, still embrace, you know, whether it may be another child, adoption, whatever it may be, you can still utilize your motherhood in other areas if you're, you know, if that's not your story where you're able to bear a child.
Yeah, so I've had some women who have reached out to me or just shared with me a little bit of their story. And there were women who they desired to birth their own children, and it didn't work out for them. And so they just said, okay, well, maybe this is not the direction that God would have me to go in. But it wasn't just them closing that chapter off. They said, okay, God, well, how do you want me to go about doing this? And so they were able to adopt other children. Some women, there were women in their neighborhood or in their village that had children that they weren't able to care for, and asked them to raise them. So though they weren't able to birth their own children, they've been able to raise a child from, you know, literally birth a few days old or maybe a day or so old, and just raise them up as their own. And so, and even like me, like I have an aunt, she doesn't have any birth children, but she is so motherly. So she you know, loves on me, and she loves on my brother. So it doesn't always, it's, I guess, the same way the miracle that I was talking about earlier, you know, I was believing for the miracle to happen one way, and the miracle that happened didn't look like what I was thinking for. Sometimes that's the miracle of motherhood for some people. The way that you will become a mother may not look like what you initially thought it would look like, but it doesn't mean that motherhood, being a mother, is not in the cards for you.
Okay. And so the last thing, I want you to share like all your information, your Instagram name, if someone just want to follow you on Instagram, your website, put it out there just in case they want to follow you, your business, everything.
Okay, so I am on Instagram at My Transparent Moments. I am on Facebook at My Transparent Moments, as well as Shanicka Vail House. My website is www.shanickavailhouse.com. And on there, you can find out more about the faith onesies. You can find out a little bit about Birthing Moments, which is the sector of My Transparent Moments that deals with the bereavement, birth, and postpartum doula. And yeah, just a little bit about some of the women who have inspired me along my way. So I am there on Instagram, Facebook, and also my website.
Okay. Well, I want to just thank you so much just for coming on. When I was laying in bed and I came across one of your reels, so I was like, okay. And so I just started watching and I was just like, oh, absolutely amazing. What you're doing, like I always tell you, is just so amazing. And it definitely give women hope and continue to fight and just know that, all things can work out for our good, whether it's one way or another way. But, you're the sun that shines. Like, it's just amazing. And
Oh,
to just see you continue to push through the process, you are determined. Like, you are determined. And I mean, it's absolutely amazing because someone else will just say, forget it, I'm not going to do it. But like you said, when God give you the promise, like, I mean, God is not a liar. So when he give you a promise, it got to happen. And like you said,
yeah.
it may not come how we want it to. There's going to be some hard days, some happy days, some sad days, some days you're just like, Jesus, look, I don't know about this Jesus days, but you just continue to push through because God is a God of his word and he cannot lie.
Nope, he told me, and I don't think this was even something pertaining to, I don't even think this was in a time where I had even experienced loss, but he told me, Nick, the only season that doesn't change is the one that you die in. And so if you just keep going, this might not be the season, for you to birth your child right now, but you can't die in this season, because if you do, then you don't get to the season where you are supposed to have the manifestation of your baby. So just keep pressing. The only season that does not change is the one that you die in.
Amazing. That's good. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Of course, I'm going to continue to follow you in your journey.
Thank you.
And thank you so much just for coming onto my platform. I really, really appreciate it. And your
Thank
story
you.
would definitely be a blessing to other ladies because, most women find this to be like embarrassing. But just for you to tell your story and you have your strength, it's going to strengthen somebody else. And my motto is reach back and grab somebody else. If I reach back and grab somebody, somebody else can reach back and grab somebody. And we can do a domino effect. So thank you so much
Absolutely.
for your time and for
Thank
coming
you for
on.
having me.
So thank you, you guys. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.